Well, good evening. What a night of nights for me to be a part of. I'm thrilled. D. Crane.
I'm going to talk from here.
Oh, so you're in good shape if I just said your name and they clapped.
That's great.
First grade teacher, associate professor of teacher education at Siena Heights University, director of undergraduate teacher education at Siena Heights University, principal of Blissfield Elementary School, director of Neighbors of Hope Women and Children's Ministry Center. And I've got 10 more pages that I could talk to you about Dee Crane's accolades and everything that she's done. But let me try it a different way if I can. Dee Crane, hired by Sister Eileen Rice, who said, "You create the weather in your classroom." We've taught that for 40 plus years now. Sally Ray, Dee Crane hired me in 2005. I was given a pair of boots by Amy Sturdivant that said, "You have a pair of big boots to fill." I've never put anything in those boots because you can't fill the boots of Dee Crane. I still have those boots, but we live now by something that Dee Crane claimed, which is teach, reach out and touch a life. That was a philosophy for a long time that Dee had. But there's one that she might not know, that anytime that anybody talks to me about our program and where it's come from and how it's going and where it's going, and it's just awesome and things are going great or something like that, and I'll just simply say, wait a minute. Dee always taught us, and it still holds true today, that if we look good, it's because we stand on the shoulders of those that have gone before us. And Dee Crane went before us. Eileen went before Dee. So we have a really solid foundation behind Dee Crane. So that's all I want to say. That's enough for me. This is all about Dee. So welcome Dee Crane, please.
Not very good with microphones. Are we okay? All right, good. I've taught several classes in this auditorium before and never needed a microphone. But we're going to use one tonight. So thank you so much for asking me to do this. Today's been a kick. I have been here since 9 a.m. and have been in 6 different classes and never made it back to the student teaching seminar, but it's all right. We videotaped the marketing piece, which was not my favorite. But when it was Doug Goodenow from Blissfield that has interviewed me numerous times for the Blissfield Advance, it made it a little easier. So I thank you. When I asked Kate to give me some direction about where she wanted me to go tonight, her direction was, "You may go any direction you would like." Scary, very scary, very, very scary. Yes, Sarah's been trying to pump me up all evening like, "Dee, you've never been scared before." Michael was trying to, yeah. So we're just gonna do this, all right? It's emotional to come back here. And I can't tell you, Siena, what it has meant to me to be invited back. So this is the legacy series. I'm going legacy. And so every left brain person knows that the first thing you do is you go to the dictionary and find out exactly what legacy means, all right? So I did that. And when you look up the definition of legacy, it says, your life story and what you leave behind. Your journey and paths you have taken that make you who you are and help to give guidance to others. It's a little 6-letter word that packs quite a punch. I always think of legacies. I just can't. Can I move? Is that going to drive you crazy? You know I can't teach sitting down. And this is what this is going to be. So I always thought of legacy in terms of when you're talking about people who have passed, the legacy they've left. So I'm hoping that this is not an omen, or better yet, I'm really hoping that I'm really not dead and I just haven't realized it yet. And so once I figured out that I guess legacy is made for people that are still alive, Then the next thing that just made me laugh out loud is the definition started with a life story. And I'm going, oh my God, how many life plans have I written over 15 years? I have written, how many of your life plans have I written? Yeah, a few of you. Occasionally I run into someone that goes, I'm gonna have a baby, is that okay? You didn't put that in my life plan. And yeah, it's fine. I figure I've written over 1,000 of them. So the word life plan kind of got to be there. So it was kind of legacy. Where do I want to take it today? And so I'm going to take it on my own personal journey. And specifically, I've decided to go with how Siena Heights has contributed to who I am today. And so I don't need to do any background because that's going to save me 5 minutes because Sally just did it. It was great. 40 years as an education. And I actually did in 2016, I did retire for 2.5 years before I started back with a new job at Neighbors of Hope. But I want to go back before probably some of you were born. I started my grad program here. Part of the reason that I qualify for a legacy series is I am an alum, all right, and I graduated with my master's degree from Siena Heights. And I started my program here in 1979. And I graduated in 1987, and I was on the long plan. So I want to kind of talk just for a couple minutes about my grad school experience here, but most of my legacy from Siena comes from my 15 years of teaching here. But you will hear several words, I hope, words, phrases throughout my presentation that I think are, if you were taking notes, they would be the vocabulary words that I wanted you to grab, all right? They're kind of the legacy pieces. So let me just kind of list those for you and see if you get an idea of how I view my experience here. My key words are priorities, caring, community, potential, acceptance, attention to detail, teachable moments, just keep swimming, dignity and justice, encouragement, footprints, integrity, get out of the way and just let God work it out. And is that dang glass really half full or is it half empty? So I want to talk about a few people who in my grad program left a legacy in me. And we can't start a grad program story from the 70s and 80s without talking about the Dr. Sister Marion Stimson. I never knew whether to call her Dr. Stimson or Sister Marion. So eventually I just started calling her Marion. If you didn't know Dr. Sister Marion Stimson, she was a mixture of incredible knowledge, wit, wisdom, a big floppy hat, and a huge dose of intimidation. I was mildly terrified of Miriam. She was the head of the graduate teacher ed program, and she was my advisor as my master's program. What did I learn from her? The lesson came when I sat with her for my exit interview. The master's program was all done. She had worked with me beautifully as I was raising 2 babies at home and trying to finish the doggone master's program. And I was looking over, and we were looking over the classes I'd taken, and we looked at it, and Miriam looked at it, and I said to her, I said, can you believe it? I would have had straight A's in my master's program if not for this 1 B. And she looked at me and I said, it was the one course where I could contract for a grade. I contracted for a B because I didn't want to do the 20-page research paper with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home. And I looked at Miriam and I said to her, I said, I can't believe it. I said I could have had straight A's and I chose to have the 1 B. And she said to me, and I always quote these because I do remember them exactly. And she said to me, she goes, Dee, With wisdom and prayer, make your decisions based upon the priorities in your life, and then live with the consequences. And I thought at the time that maybe she didn't understand how much all A's meant to me. And then at other times, as we have with people in our lives, the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, that 20-page paper would have taken a lot of time away from my kids. And I made the best decision. And so I have learned to live with the consequences. Not that I don't that I don't wish I had all A's. Then I had Dr. Bob Cryan. He was an amazing early childhood education guru that taught several early childhood courses in our grad program. He lived in Toledo. And I loved his courses because he was in the middle of action research. And so we watched, it was kind of like Sister Anthonita's one-way mirror down in the Montessori. He had permission with these, for all of his study, to actually videotape real preschool kids. And so it was amazing. I learned a ton in there. But one day I got ready to go to class earlier in the day and the truck wouldn't start. Again, two babies at home. It did, and my husband wasn't home yet. And so I called Bob at home and I said to him, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to miss class tonight. I don't have, my truck won't start. And Bob said, I come right through Blissfield on my way to Siena. I'll stop and pick you up for class and I'll drop you off at home. And I thought at that particular time that sometimes it's not what people, how brilliant they are and how much they know. What I needed right there was a basic need taken care of. I didn't have the wheels to get to class. And missing a class with him was like missing a class with me. Your grade went down half a grade. I look at Sarah because she knows that. All right. And so I didn't mean that she missed a lot of classes, Mark. I really didn't mean that. All right. But so sometimes it's like that sign. Sometimes, you know, kids don't need to know what you know. They need to know that you care. And for me, with Bob, that was it. He knew how badly I wanted to get to class. And he did. He drove in my driveway. He picked me up. We talked all the way to class, and he took me home. It was in my graduate program that I met the Adrian Dominican sisters. And it's pretty hard to sum up the life lessons that you've learned from them, because that could be like an all-day presentation of lessons that I've learned from the Adrian Dominican sisters. But I guess I can sum it up. I'm going to try to sum it up in a really long run-on sentence. Anybody English here? Okay, good. Good grammar person is knowing when to break the rules and make it okay. So what I learned from the Adrian Dominican sisters that I keep in my heart all the time is that we are called to share our faith, and we're called to share our lives with others. And that includes, and that this has to have quotes around it, that includes seeking truth, making peace, and demonstrating a reverence for life. Life and faith, the Dominican sisters have taught me that life and faith are not meant to be experienced alone. That it's rather, all of life needs to be experienced in community. And the older I have gotten, and I wouldn't say I've gotten any wiser, but the older I've gotten and the more experiences I've had, I'm more committed to the fact that life has to be experienced in community, that you can't do it alone. We just need each other. And so I learned that from the Adrian Dominican sisters. It was in grad school that I first met Sister Eileen Rice. She was my teacher, my advanced ed psych teacher, and she was my master's thesis committee chairperson. The biggest lesson from her here, I told this story today with the students and they didn't believe me, honestly. I was taking advanced ed psych from Eileen. I had never met her before. It was the first class. And about 3/4 of the way through it, right in the middle of class, we were all in a big, semicircle thing. And she looked right at me and she goes, did you ever think about being a college professor? And I said, no. And she said, well, you really should rethink that. You'd be good at it. And that was the end of the discussion. And so 2 weeks later, she's walking around the classroom and she turns around and she looks at me and she says, thought any more about being a college professor? I said, no. And I learned later that probably saying no to Eileen Rice was really not a really good idea when you were a student. But she looked at me again and she goes, so I'm assuming you want me to drop the subject. And I said, Eileen, when I go back, Sister Eileen, when I go back to work, I'm going to return to Blissfield Elementary School and I want to go back to teaching first grade. And the following week, she came into class, and I don't have my pad of paper that Sally gave me, but she walked by my desk and she literally threw the winter course book on my desk. And she said, page 4, you're teaching elementary core methods in 6 weeks. I said, is this up for debate? And she says, no, course schedules went out 4 days ago. She says, you've already got 21 kids registered in your class. Elementary core methods, the 4-semester hour junior class, the hardest one to teach, my absolute favorite. What did I learn from Eileen with that one? I learned that there are precious people in your lives that will see potential in you that you've never, ever thought was possible. I never wanted to be a college professor. I never saw myself in that role before. And somewhere along the line, this precious sister saw a potential in me that I didn't see in myself. And sometimes we meet those people that give us that gentle nudge, or in Eileen's case, one outright shove. All right. And that started my 15-year life here at Siena Heights as an assistant associate professor and 10 years as the director of the undergrad program. I can call her Eileen now because then I started to work for her. Eileen's lessons continued in my life till 1994 when she passed. She became my greatest mentor and one of my most cherished friends. She taught me that, this was her tagline and I love it. She taught me that differences were gifts to be cherished, not deficits to be corrected. If we would just embrace that in today's world, instead of trying to fix everybody, life would be different everywhere. But differences were gifts to be cherished, not deficits to be corrected. She made sure that I knew what it meant to be tactful. And she did that with a sign that was in her office. And as you were sitting across the desk from her with your foot in a litter box, a cat litter box, at least one, you would read the sign that tact is the art of telling someone to go to hell in such a way that they look forward to the trip. So I learned, I'm not sure I learned that one very well. She taught me a commitment to excellence and that means an attention to detail. If you ever rode anywhere with Eileen, well, if you ever rode anywhere with Eileen, it was an experience. First of all, she always drove and graded papers at the same time. She only did that once with me because when we ran a red light, I looked at her and said, this is the last time you're driving. But Eileen noticed every sign that had a misspelling or a grammar error on it. And she not only noticed it, we stopped as she went in to tell them that their sign was not correct. One of the last times that I was with her and we were going to Lansing, I was driving, she was very sick at that time. And we had her oxygen tank. And prior to that, as we were driving and she was ill, she would pull into the driveway of a place with a sign that was misspelled. And then she would look at me and say, go tell them to change that sign. And so I would get out of the car and go in and explain that there was an error on the board. Well, it was our last trip to Lansing, and she knew it was our last trip to Lansing. And it had been very difficult. I'm just saying that she was extremely weak. And we drove by an elementary school that was honoring their principal. And on the front billboard, they had spelled principal incorrectly. Somewhere along the line, they didn't know that every principal is your pal. All right? And I'm driving, I'm watching her very carefully, and she noticed the sign. And I looked at it and I went, oh, I'm gonna have to go into a school. And I pulled up in front and I started to get out of the car, and she looked at me and said, oh no, I have this one. So I got out, I looked at her, and she had it. She grabbed her oxygen tank on her little cart. Into the school she went. Typically, we just informed them of the error. Oh no, she came out with some poor secretary that she's standing there change the sign while we were standing there. So I learned a little bit about the attention to detail. And there's a lot I learned. But I learned the most, I guess, about grace and dying. God called the shots on that one with her, but Sister Eileen Rice did it her way. And with the grace and dignity that I could only hope to show others at a time in my life when it wasn't all it was supposed to be for someone that was 49 years old. A few other people that have taught me lessons. I was telling at lunch today, Amy and I had a great idea. She's the one that kind of like filtered me tonight. No, they would have enjoyed the other part, but they will love the book. All right, yeah. I said, that I had dirt and stories on probably every faculty member that's here or is retired, and that it would be really fun to just stand up and tell, this one, I got this one stories. And Amy convinced me that that's probably better off left for the book. So apparently there will be a book. Trudy McSorley, she taught me about teaching as a performing art. And she taught me what it meant to take advantage of teachable moments. That was her phrase, teachable moments. She was always saying to me, Dee, take advantage of teachable moments. That means put your lesson plan away and stop and take care of whatever it is that can be the lesson of the day, and be willing to let what was my extreme having to have everything planned out exactly like it was supposed to go. But she taught me about teachable moments, and I used those with my own kids, who are both here tonight. Thank you very much, children. They were brought up here, and they both graduated from here. So they're alums as well. I brought Benjamin to, a diversion. I brought Benjamin to class with me one night when he was like 4, and he had the flu, the barfing flu. And his father decided that he really did not want to take care of a child with the barfing flu. So I looked at him and I thought, what the heck? Elementary core methods. They're learning how to be teachers. They need to have a barfing kid. So I carried him in and I laid him in the corner and I pulled out the barf bucket, and the students looked at me and said, what's going on? And I said, my son, Benjamin, he's throwing up. And they all looked at me like, you want us to stay? Uh-huh. Yes, I do. Teachable moments, and I'm learning teachable moments with the population that I'm dealing with right now. Teachable moments, taking those times to just stop and say, whoa, whatever it was that I had planned, the zoo that's happening behind me, can wait while I take this one-on-one moment. Fred Smith. When I first met him, I thought he was the most gentle giant I'd ever met. And then I sat behind him at a basketball game. Apparently, he's not real gentle on referees. And I learned very quickly what this meant. It was Fred's technical for the, I don't know how many times. Fred and I are extremely good friends, and he has taught me that when life deals you some of the most heart-wrenching and devastating blows, that you just walk down that long, dark path, just putting one foot in front of the next. And then allowing community to come alongside of you and just quietly, without saying a word, be there. He taught me that no one should ever have to walk alone through times in your lives. And to never assume that he had or we have someone else that's filling that role. It's easy for me to say, I don't have to walk this path right now. It's a little difficult. I really haven't got time. But there's lots of other people that I'm sure are around him. Okay. No, don't ever assume. But I've never seen a person in all of the years that I've known him go through what he has gone through and still continue to put one foot in front of the other. Ann Lauderdale, one of my daughter's favorite people. She chose Ann Lauderdale over her mother. She took Principles of Teaching from me and Intro to Social Work, and it was the last class she ever took from her mother. She's sitting here with going, mm-hmm, yeah. Ann Lauderdale taught me that whatever is truly right is worth fighting for. And that dignity and justice for every human being is a cause worth continuously educating people and continually fighting for. And she taught me that the best way to teach dignity and justice is to model it. That woman is, yeah, she's just sweet. She's just wonderful. And she just continues to work with people on restorative justice, on conflict resolution, on everything that is meaningful to her. And everything that's right is worth fighting for. Rick Artman. I had to include him. Dr. Rick Artman was the president here for a really long time when I was here. Sister Kathleen was the president when I was hired. She was the one that the first interview question she ever asked me was, so what's the best book you've read recently? And that was not exactly the interview question that I was expecting, so my response was not what she was expecting when I said I think it was some hot novel that burned my fingers when I held the pages. And but for Rick we had a lot of short conversations, and they always seemed to come back to the words professionalism, integrity, and character. And he said to me a couple of different times, I've got it in quotes because I remember it. He was talking about professionalism, integrity, and character. And he said, these are simple words to utter, easy traits to lose, and essential traits for any child of God and role model for others. And I thought, simple to utter, easy to say, oh, I'm filled with integrity. Only takes a moment to lose it. And I've always preached and believed that teachers as role models have no other choice but to be professional, to exhibit integrity, and to exhibit the utmost character. And then there's Mary Griffin. I'm going to end with her, with this piece. I've always said that when I grow up, I want to be just like Mary Griffin. And I haven't made it yet. But I do keep swimming towards that goal. Keep on swimming. Mary was and still is, and I think some of you in this room have experienced it, she is known for her handwritten notes. Right, Mark? Yes. Handwritten notes. No matter what I would do, what I was getting ready to do, a presentation I was giving, a class I was apprehensive about, whatever it was, usually the very next morning, we were just talking about this, that we had keys that keyed everybody's office in the PAC, so I could get in anybody's office whenever I felt like it. But Mary always had keyed my office, and sitting on my desk was a sticky note or a really large handwritten thank you note. Sometimes it was like, really awesome job, Dee. Or it was, congratulations, it really went well. Or it was just anything like that at all. Now, Mary still does that. Every time my name appears in the newspaper, in anything but the police report, she cuts out the article, she folds it up, she puts a handwritten note on it. Congratulations on your new endeavor. I can't wait to see the ministry center was the last one I got. Except for the one I got today that says, I'm so sorry I'm not going to be at your presentation tonight. I know you'll kick butt. So she's still out there writing notes, not sending a text, not sending an email. She takes the time in her beautiful Mary Griffin handwriting to write a personal note. And I don't think anybody realizes, unless you've received a Mary Griffin note or a note from somebody else, that a handwritten note is not only encouragement, but it brings tears of joy and always touches me to the core of my heart when I know that someone has taken the time to write me a note. We seem to have lost the passion and the commitment to community and the personal touch, and rest assured, Mary Griffin has not. Mary kept me focused. Every time when I was in the middle of stuff, accreditation reports, 600 advisees lined up in the hallway, Amy trying to pass out numbers as to who was next. I'd get ready to go out and teach a class, and I'd have it all on a cart, and I'd be headed out the door, and what was Mary's final words to me? D, go and do what you do best. Always, D, go and do what you do best. Always that focus that brought me back to, it's not about report writing, and it's not about all of this. It's about my talent. Hello, Cammie DePietro. I'm gonna make you feel really embarrassed. Come on. It's just go and do what you do best. And it was Mary who taught me, and Sally, you kind of alluded to this earlier. It was Mary who taught me that you can never fill someone else's shoes. And I spent 2 years really trying to fill Eileen Rice's shoes. And everybody that I would meet, someone would introduce me as the director of the undergraduate program, and it always was followed by, she took Eileen's place. And then the next comment was, wow, you got a tough pair of shoes, Prince, to follow. And number one, I never took her place. And number two, Yes, I was trying really hard to fill her shoes. And the bottom line was, I couldn't. And I was exhausting myself to the point of where I really wasn't sure I could do it anymore. And Mary recognized that. I never told her. She recognized that. And one day I walked into the office. Everybody was always there before me because I am not a morning person. The 9 o'clock meeting with Sally this morning was a stretch. None of my education students will ever tell you they took a course for me in the morning, ever. Okay, they will tell you that they were with me till 10 o'clock at night, but they will never tell you that they took a morning class for me. So I was always the last one in, one of the last ones out after Eileen was gone. She was always the last one out. But I walked in, and hanging on my door, she hadn't keyed my office, hanging on my door was a shoebox, and it was empty. And on it, and I still have the lid, and on it she had written, Eileen would never expect you to fill her shoes. She would expect you to make footprints of your own. And it was like, all of a sudden, it was like permission to be Dee Crane, not the person that took Eileen Rice's position. And so Mary Griffin, she's one of my favorites. When I left Siena, it was painful. And it was not what I had planned for my life. Sharon, honestly, you know how hard it was. And I went in to tell her I was crying, but God had a different plan, and I returned to Blissfield, the school where I started kindergarten, and my kids went through school there, and I started my teaching career there. I was offered the middle school position first. I got some Blissfield people here. Betty Kohler had retired, and Paul called me and asked me if I ever wanted to be a middle school principal. And I said, heck no, I couldn't stand my own kids when they were in middle school. And I said, no, I don't. No. My daughter would have been the worst case scenario there, and she and Amy are really lethal sitting together up there. I said to him, he said, would you ever like to be a principal? I said, ever. And I said, probably not, but I would probably think twice about it if it happened to be Blissfield Elementary School. And 2 weeks later, Pat Gittersanke walked in and retired, and I got a phone call from Paul, and he says, put your money where your mouth is, girl. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I have an open elementary principal position. And so I made the decision, went in and told Sharon, and I started another adventure where the learning curve was right straight up. I knew nothing about being a principal. I knew nothing about being a college professor. I did learn that once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher, and I learned that my teachers back there will tell you that's the best kind of principal, is the one that remembers that they were a teacher and thinks like a teacher. I learned that administration, Linda, I'm sorry, I learned that administration can suck the lifeblood out of you with issues and paperwork and test scores, right, Sharon? Mm-hmm. And accreditation reports. Just when I thought I left 3 at Siena Heights, I walked into 3 different accreditation series with Blissfield Community Schools. The key that I learned, and I have said that to my daughter before too, is my administrative assistant and her cohort, who's back there, looked at me and said, you have got to get out of your office at least once a week and spend time with kids. You have got to get out and remember why you went into this profession in the first place. And so I had a lot of friends that when I started at Blissfield, I had 7 7 Sienna students that had come through the program here that were teaching at Blissfield Elementary. So when I walked in the first day as the principal, I went, surprise, you're stuck with me again. But I would say to them, can I please just come and read to your kids? And they were all sweet enough to allow me to do that. So why did I go into teaching in the first place? Because I believe with my whole heart, and I still do, that I can make a difference in the lives of all the children whose pathways that I cross in one way or another. I have never thought that to be naive. I have never thought that to be unattainable. I believe that I was called to make a difference in the lives of every child whose path I crossed, whether that be as a teacher, as a principal, or as a teacher of teachers. I've always been an optimist. I've never believed it's about seeing the glass half full or half empty, because it drives Vicki Sanchez out of her mind at Blissfield Elementary, because she goes, Dee just wants to see the glass half empty. And I'll go, no, I always see the glass 100% full. It's always full. And I've changed that just a little bit now, because in working in my new job with homeless children, I went that route after becoming a principal, and I saw families in Blissfield, lots of families in Blissfield. In Blissfield, we don't have people like that. Living in cars. I visited one in a pop-up camper in the middle of the winter. No heat, no lights, no running water. And every time little one needed to go to the bathroom, she crossed through the snowy path into grandma's house by herself, where she could have easily fallen and died before it became morning. I found families that had no safe place for shelter and for safety and for healing. So when Neighbors of Hope asked me to, again, put my body where my big mouth had been, and I had been ragging for over 10 years as the principal that there was nowhere in Lenawee County for homeless children to go, and that the only option that I ever had as a principal was to call Child Protective Services. And at that point in time, the children were taken away and put into foster care. And they were taken away from some of the most loving, wonderful mothers and families that were doing the best they could. And taking their children away was not the answer. The answer was some place for them to go where they could find hope and healing. And so the Neighbors of Hope Women's and Children's Ministry Center asked me if I would direct that program. So in January, I started that project. Hard hat zone was what it was. Knocking down walls, doing all kinds of cool things, picking out new furniture, new beds. Did 58 presentations in Lenawee County, trying to dispel fear and to educate. And in August, we cut the ribbon and we opened, and the very next day, we welcomed our first resident. I agreed to a year. After all, I was retired. I was staying up every night to watch Jimmy Fallon and James Corden, and then I was sleeping until 9 o'clock. I was doing that. And so I had said to Pastor Steve, I said, yes, I'll do it if I can stay semi-retired, and how many hours do you think this is going to take me? And he gave my stock answer right now when it comes to the center. I don't know. And he said, how about 24 hours a week? I said, I can live with 24 hours a week. I can live with 24 hours a week. Well, I haven't put in a week yet that's been less than 60. No joke. There are nights I've spent the night there. There's nights the night shift hasn't shown up after I've done an 8-hour, and then I do the whole 10-hour night. After all, I am a night person. It's turned out to be a little bit more than a semi-retirement kind of thing. So I pull in an Eileen Rice. My assistant director is more than capable. All right, I've seen her strengths. So the plan was I would train her, and as of the end of the year, my year would be up. I get a chance to volunteer, be a consultant, do all that good kind of stuff. And then there was just a little kink thrown in all of that, and the fact that my appendix ruptured in September. And so we were on the fast track. 8 weeks, I couldn't go to work. So my assistant director is now the director, and I am living the good life again in the fact that I go in and play with kids and rock babies, and then I go home. And it's really, really awesome. It's not a homeless shelter. It's a ministry center. It's a long-term program. We want to restore lives. We don't want fly-by shelter hoppers. We're a no-tolerance home for drugs, alcohol. We're not an addiction recovery program. Does that mean we do not have those issues? No, it does not. But what has happened there is I've changed my thought on whether the glass is half full or whether it's half empty. And my response that it's always full. And what I've changed to is that I'm just dang grateful that I even have a glass. And that when I have a glass, I can always refill it. And so for those women whose lives are worse than half empty, where it looks like there's nothing left at all, and they're in a hopeless, broken situation, my response to them is, just be really happy you've got a glass. It may be empty right now, but together we're going to see if we can't fill it. So preparing for this tonight's brought back wonderful memories. Reminded me of the person and everything that has to do with the people in my life. I could speak for a really long time about life lessons. I learned the most lessons here from my college students. They were the absolute best part of being at Siena. They put up with my left brain nature. We were talking about this at lunch today, and forced me to think of life in new ways. They were there when my life was struggling, and they were there when in the best times. They were the guy that came to my office, and my dear sweet ones that would come to the office, my guys, and they'd go, Dee, does this tie match this suit? And it was that mothering part that was, they just always made me smile. So as I was ending it here, I couldn't help but go with, so my challenge to you would be, if a legacy is not about being dead, all right, and if it's about who's made us who we are, and that who we are helps to guide people along the way on the pathways of life, then what would I hope my legacy would be? And that's quite a thing to ponder. Kind of sounds like I'm writing what I want on my tombstone, and that's not it at all. But I think it's really worth saying. What do we want our legacy to be? And are we living our lives in such a way that it lives out what we're hoping? And so I made myself sit down and write it out. What do I hope my legacy would be? And I would hope that it would be that I am a woman dedicated to making a difference in the lives of children, and that I do it with compassion, and I do it with integrity, and I do it with complete faith that God is using me as his hands and his voice. So I challenge you and bless you as you write your own life stories and as you are creating your own legacies. And it's been an incredible day in one of my extremely favorite places. And that is all I have.
Does anybody have any questions for Dee?
Go ahead, hit me with them. Like, what's the meaning of life? Don't know. Oh, really? Drill and kill is my best. Because everybody's sitting here, I know. Any questions about anything?
I have a question.
Yes, my
How
dear.
do you feel? I love what you said about teacher is always a teacher. And because I often explain to students in my work as a career service director, when I joke about when people are like, oh, you mad you never used your degree? You know, I talk about I use my degree all the time.
All the time.
And this is how I feel like teaching has affected me. So in what you're doing now or what you were doing recently, how do you feel like the teaching aspect came out in the Neighbors of Hope?
Good question, Sarah.
Thank you.
Former
I had to make up for that missed class.
That's right, former student of mine. Yes, it comes out in a lot of ways. We have a whole group of kids. In fact, I was joking. It's not a joke. I'm going tomorrow to decorate the ministry center for Christmas. And I will have help 5, 6 kids, all under the age of 3. And so I envision that Christmas tree that only has 3 branches on the bottom decorated, because that's all the higher they're going to be able to. And I'm going to have to tie it up because they'll knock it down. And so I'm in my element with the children that are there. Where I'm not exactly in my element is the area of teaching adults that don't particularly think they need to be taught. And probably every middle school teacher experiences that all the time. I don't know. But I never had that problem at Siena. Everybody that was in the teacher ed program, they filtered themselves out after the first course with me. And so everybody else that was there wanted to stay. Maria was done. Yeah, she was out of there. So I mean, like I was explaining to somebody today, I've been here since 9 o'clock, that the women are expected to have a 20-hour-a-week job in the first 30 days. And if they don't, they're out. There's plenty of jobs in Tecumseh that they can either walk to, or we now have a beater van that runs when it wants to, but we can take people around. And when they come back with their paycheck, they're required to show that paycheck stub to me. And they also are required on intake to tell me everything that they have to pay for yet. All right, so many of these women, don't know this, many of these women are paying child support. Their children have been taken away from them and have been given to the fathers. And so they're behind thousands of dollars in child support payments. Some of them have loans and stuff that they've purchased that they've never paid for with credit cards. Some of them have incarceration bills that they have to pay for. And so there's an enormous amount of education that takes place when they sit down and there's not enough money in that paycheck to pay out everything that's supposed to be paid for on that month. So it's making decisions about budgeting and about how am I ever going to get myself in a place in 6 to 8 months where I can afford my own apartment. It's about head lice eradication, okay? It's about, I'm a guru at that. Okay, I got that one nailed. That is one thing my assistant director needed some instruction on, Sandy. I should have had you come over because we've got this one, all right? I made the mistake of telling her that I have no problem with head lice, all right? I can do that. And as a principal, I used to do it, we did it all the time. And so I got a call at like 10 o'clock at night one night after I'd just gone home that says, Dee, one of the kids came back from Marie Spear and they came back with head lice. And I said, okay, what do you want me to do about that tonight? And she goes, oh, I want it out of here. And they went, it's not gonna happen tonight. One night's not gonna make any difference. So it's teaching moms that when kids have got head lice, if you've ever dealt with that in your home, it costs thousands of dollars to get rid of head lice. It's expensive. So what do? Well, for most of them, it's like, well, we'll just let them stay. And that's not an option in our place. But there's just all of that teaching that takes place. Okay, so what's plan B? We provide childcare from 7 a.m. in the morning till 7 p.m. What's plan B if your work schedule is second shift, 3 till 11? We're only providing childcare till 7. What is your plan B? If you weren't with us, what would you do with your kids? And there's more teaching there than probably I've had in a really long time. And it's probably the toughest teaching gig I've ever had because it's a population that I don't personally relate to. I've never been homeless. So it's a full-time teaching job all the time. Thanks for the question, sweetheart. That was a really long answer. I'm sorry.
Hi, Dee.
Hi.
Loved your talk and the
Thank
stories about such wonderful people. And I love the characteristics that you're standing for and that you're completely emulating. And the one that I want to focus on is purpose and how you've helped kids, maybe activities or conversations you've had with kids, or maybe at risk or homeless that maybe don't have a lot of hope. How do you help them find purpose in their lives?
That competent, purposeful, and ethical piece. Oh, wow, that's a really good question. I think as college, with my college students, I felt that it was extremely important for them to have an experience in the classroom their first semester so that they knew whether they like kids or not. And it was always a challenge to me with the college student that would come in and say to me in tears, Dee, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, but that's always been my mom's dream. And so helping them with career options and all of those kind of pieces was part of my position here in finding purpose. As the principal, I didn't have to worry about helping teachers find purpose. They already knew that. But children, and I had 500 and some change most of the time, kids in that building with no assistant principal. And I would always take kids it was always the kids that were struggling that ended up in my office. You know, the good ones didn't usually get sent to the principal's office, but the ones that were struggling, and a lot of times it was the special ed kids, or it was someone that had some massive issue that was taking place in their lives. They'd always told college, Mary's son in the back. I had her son in my office daily, hourly some days. Purpose. Yes, purpose. Yes. I worked with him a long time, and he was a special one for me. And when he left the elementary school, he bought me a red rose bush that still blossoms every year. And the kids that were in trouble, I mean, really in trouble with some pretty big stuff. It was about finding the light at the end of the tunnel somewhere and helping students see that no matter, it sounds awful to say you can beat anything, but you really can. You can really strive for it. Just because you learn differently doesn't mean that you can't. Finding purpose with the women at the shelter, at the ministry center, is difficult. And I am still struggling with that one. Because some of them have not realized yet that they're broken and that they need help. And until they reach that point where they can say, I'm broken, I need help, will you help me? They're closed-minded to any ideas that I could possibly have for them. So you just keep throwing out options. And to me, purpose is also about sharing my life story. That 3/4 of what it is that I've accomplished in a 40+ career, I never ever dreamed I would ever do. It's being open. And to me, the wonderful thing about being a nonprofit with Neighbors of Hope is I talk a lot about God's direction, seeking God's will, seeking his plan for your life. You know, you want to make God laugh, just tell him what it is you think you want in your life, okay? Because he's laughed at me numerous times and said, nope, that's not what I planned for you. Tonight you are not staying up to see James Corden because you are going to spend the night at the center. And so I use a lot of the sense of purpose being seeking out God's will, God's plan, being quiet, listening for his voice, understanding that the world is really loud. And I try to do all of that. That's a really long answer, and I probably never even answered it. But it sounded really good in time. Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Robin. Yeah, just yell it out, Robin.
Dee, I'm wondering how you work in color-coded copies into your current role. That's important.
I don't have a budget for colored paper. Oh, yes. I don't. I've put nothing on color in my current role, but I will go back this week now and do it for sure. Yes, that was a big part of the undergraduate teacher education budget was colored copy paper, because Dee color coded everything. Yeah. Purple. Well, yes, when I started at the elementary school, I told all of the teachers that, I mean, they had colored paper back at their disposal, and I found the most beautiful shade of lilac that I loved. And they put this big sign on it that said, "Dee's paper only." And so I said to them, yes, it is, yeah. And so I said to them, you'll always know when you're getting a communication from me because it's on purple. Just like I always graded all of your papers in purple ink because I didn't believe in bleeding red ink all over papers like Eileen bled all over my master's thesis. So, no, I haven't. Oh, doggone. Can I borrow a ream of that purple paper? Thank you. Awesome. Color coded. That's where those students made me force myself out of the box. But no, yeah. Pull out your green sheet. Thank you, sweetheart.
Anyone else? And if not, I do want, because we have a reception in the lobby after, and of course, a lot of people like to visit with you, but I just want to say, I know I posted this on Facebook to anybody who's friends, but that I truly, I'm so excited to have you a part of this legacy series, because I really believe what you're doing and the legacy that you have left. I'm glad it's not one of death, but I'm glad.
I better make it home tonight. Yeah.
Truly believe that you are a living saint.
Oh,
And a great representative of who Siena Heights is. And so please, one more time, thank Dee Crane for being our legacy series. And please visit with her out in the lobby. Go and hang out with people. And thank you so much for coming. And we are excited about this series for sure because of people like Dee who just represent Siena Heights and everything that we hope we're leaving as our legacy through people like her. So thank you again for coming. Yes, enjoy yourself out there. Yes. My son would say, free food. Always the best part. You want to stop before you? Yes. I just don't know where this is.